And can I remind everyone to please put their mobile phones on silent mode and keep the phone away from the microphones to minimise interference. Can I request that anyone who has brought a cup or glass into the committee room, please can you return it to the kitchen area after the meeting has finished? Thank you very much. So we'll start with the agenda. Item number 1 is apologies for absence. I understand we have apologies for Councillor Garside and Councillor Ray Tully, who is usually the chair for this committee, and I'm standing in as a deputy. He's away today. Do we have any others? No. Okay. Declarations of interest. Item number 2. Item 3, minutes from the previous council meeting held on Monday, the 11th of September 2023. Members to formally review and note the minutes from the grants subcommittees held on the 10th of July, 9th of October 2023, and approve the grants and recommendations within them. I need a proposer and a seconder to them. Does anyone want to make any observations on the minutes? Proposer?
Yeah, I'm fine with them through. They all look like an accurate record of the meetings that I attended, so happy to propose all 3.
Fabulous. And do we have a seconder at all? Yeah, Councillor Toombs.
Just need you to start them, so here.
Fabulous. Three.
You should probably have this.
Yeah, sorry. We've had a proposer and a seconder. Can I have a show of hands, please? Just thank you very much. That's unanimous. So item number 4, the internal audit report. The recommendation for this is members to consider the internal audit report and recommend the associated actions required for full council approval. Anyone like to ask any questions?
Yeah, Deacon. Yeah, just to I thought it all looked sensible, but I thought it worth asking. Sally, is there anything on there that there was a problem for you or surprised you in terms of the findings?
I actually always think it's really reassuring having the auditor in and picking up some stuff. And of course, the other thing I think is we're running quickly as a brand new council, we put an awful lot in place, and actually to take the moment to look back and go, actually, is this right? And as lots of this was put together before we were even a thing, actually now when we were working as a actual council and things are happening, to go back and go, actually, that those don't quite mirror, or that doesn't quite match. The opportunity to put those right now, early on, is really good. And there's nothing there that is a major concern to me, and everything's fixable. So I was really pleased actually with what you picked up. So yeah, and yeah, you've got lots of things to look at. Data, lots of it. Sorry.
Any acute?
With reference to the grants committee, I know we're talking about making the grants committee a full committee, not a subcommittee, which means it would no longer have to report to this committee. But I was wondering whether it's worth looking at in future, when we're setting the diaries, having the grants committee in advance of the finance committee, should we then need to ask any questions or bring anything up? Because at the moment it's quite a long time after the finance committee.
Yeah. I think we are looking at the diary and the frequency of the meetings anyway for next year, because I don't think we've quite got the split right. I think there's probably too many full council meetings and not enough committees. So we probably need to swing that so the committees do more of the work and then reports to full council. And that could then mean we either pick out 3 full council or the financial evidence. So yes, we'll.
I think it's to look at then the scheme of delegation or the delegations to those committees, because am I right that if the grants make the decision, do they physically leave the council until this committee has approved them? So if we're telling them that it needs to go to full council, then do we physically let the grant go to the committee despite the subcommittee making the decision?
So we're looking to change the grants subcommittee into a full committee,
And then it can
make the decision itself, and it will only effectively update through full council. So through the full council seeing the minutes, which is what the auditor has picked up, the full council will have an oversight of all of the minutes of everything that's going on across your council.
But it doesn't need to be approved by. the
No,
board.
not approved, but just noted, noted recommendations.
So I've got a bit, I'm not too sure, because is this report not stating that it should be ratified by another committee?
So
Because surely, as there's 20 town councillors, if a committee of, I don't know what number is, 5, 6, 9, whatever, surely it's for full council to sign off any grants. So every councillor has the oversight before grants are issued.
okay, so at the moment, what has happened is grants have been awarded by the grants committee. And today you're looking at the minutes just today to ratify those that have already been given out.
Yeah.
The suggestion going forward is that the grants become a grants committee, not a subcommittee, but a full committee. So they can approve the grants at the grants meeting. The oversight will happen afterwards, but it's not asking for approvals or recommendation, we're not waiting for the full council to agree it. They'll be agreed at that grants meeting. So yes, you, in terms of changing the terms of reference, you are giving the grants committee the authority to give out and approve grants at that meeting.
So I still have a little bit of an issue with that, so I apologise. Where's the checks and balance then with that? Because there is none. The committee has the opportunity to give out council funds without full council seeing it. I can't see how that's wrong.
That's how all the committees choose, that's how all the committees make the decisions that they have within their terms of reference.
There's also a grants policy and then
There is a
governs
policy.
how grants
But
will work.
what I'm saying is full council is the top, and because every council should know and be able to approve any money that leaves this council. So coming to a full council and saying we've issued out these grants is great, but that surely needs to be voted on by 20 councillors to give approval, because otherwise there's money going out without people's knowledge.
You set a budget, grants budget in your.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is not necessarily the budget, it's who it's going to.
But you have.
So there's no checks and balances to say, because, for instance, and I'm not saying it's happening, but it could do in the future game day, touch wood not, that all grants money goes to one person, there's no checks and balance there to say that, you know, who's then accountable? Who's then accountable for that decision? Because that should go to full council, in my opinion. And that's,
Okay.
yeah, sorry, Councillor D.
Sorry, Councillor Hughes first, I don't know if you want to go first.
Just to say, in the grants policy, at the moment, it is limited technically to £2,500. There is leeway for flexibility if there's special circumstances, but with £2,500, you can't ask the same person or the same group can't ask for the same money or the same thing repeatedly. That's all. There's stipulations in the policy. So we couldn't give all of the money to one group. That just wouldn't happen under the current policy. My understanding is that the amount that we're giving, and actually not dissimilar to the amount that, say, the town clerk, we have delegated authorities for the town clerk to spend similar sums of money without coming to full committee for authorisation, because that's just a delegated responsibility. So as a council, we agreed to give the grants committee delegated authority to carry that out, because it would just be too cumbersome. There were 18 applications, I think, in the first round. It was a very, very long meeting, and we had pre-meetings to fully discuss all of the cases before we then heard representation from all 18 groups of people. It just wouldn't be workable for the full council to do that every time.
No, I think Amber just said it already. I think we'll make it more burdensome as an organisation if everything has to consistently go through full council. I don't think we'll move quickly or with enough agility as we might want to. So I think they're all public meetings, so that means there's agendas, there's minutes, everything for all of them. I think part of noting the minutes when they come back to full council is that then if anyone spots anything, that's why they're coming back to full council's minutes. So then you can flag, actually, I'm not sure that process was followed there, and then we might investigate whether it was followed or not. So I think all committees have got some level of delegated responsibility in the same way that the town clerk has. Otherwise, we'll be forever in full council meetings signing off small amounts of money for everything the town council might want to do.
Yeah, so presumably the checks are done
in terms of the information we receive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so,
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
that's not in.
okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. So, for instance, you would look at, for argument's sake, who's on the board or who's associated with it. And if you saw, because what I'm trying to get at is, we're not, one person is on a board or part of groups that, eight applications come through and that person, do you know what I mean? So that happens.
Doesn't,
Okay.
I think my view is that I think it's fine for then it to go to full council, but I do think maybe there's some training or some way of working at full council. So it's not just rubber stamping of minutes, whether that's the chairs of the committees that come through and talk through the grants. Otherwise, I sometimes think minutes just go, oh, okay, done, fine, carry on, next one, rather than talking through and saying, actually, we've done this and we've done that to show that there was due process and thought and put into it, rather than, are we all happy that the minutes were correct?
yeah, and I think actually that's what we're doing, the talking part, but we're not been doing the minutes part, so actually this is putting the two things together.
Sorry, just quick. I'm trying to avoid too much talking time. Can I just check, is the grants money paid before the councillors get to full council?
At the minute it is because of the timings of the meetings.
Okay.
I was actually going to come back just to the audit papers, just to say, actually, I found it really thorough in its approach. I like the way that I'm not normally one to talk about layout, so I always think it's about substance rather than how things are presented. But actually, I find this really easy to understand what the auditor was saying, because auditing can be quite a dry subject for people. But actually to say that
Some people, yeah.
that actually, do you know what, it's our first year and they've come in and they've gone, yeah, there is some things that you can do, there's some things you're doing well, but actually we want you to work on this. So, and then the check, the comments that the team and you, Sally, probably put together all seems reasonable. They've even gone into the level of detail of exactly some of the grants that are given out where expenses have been done differently. So I think for me, it's a good starting point, but there's no like huge red flags. So
I have a further question just from two, how tenders have obtained is set out in the financial regulations. So am I right in reading that any contracts that are awarded at the moment are down to the discretion of the town clerk? And what they're recommending is that it should be full council that should approve those.
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because we did waive the tender process and it went to full council and it was actually agreed by full council and didn't go to the clerk. So we are following that open process, even though our regs didn't say that. And usually it would be the full council that would agree that as a body, which I think is about a number one.
Any other questions on agenda number 4? So we just noting that, or Rosie, can I have a proposer? Please.
Will be going to full council, it's a recommendation.
Councillor Roberts, and second of these. Councillor Duquesne. All those in favour? Unanimous. Agenda item number 5, financial regulations, internal controls. The recommendation for this is members to consider amendments to the financial regulations, internal controls and purchase ordering and payment for goods and services policy, and to recommend the amendments to full council to approve. Number 5.
Hopefully you can see the tracked change versions.
that was my question. That's what I can't see, but it might be that I've got the PDF up, so it's my PDF reader not doing it. But so are you able to talk us through the changes, Sally? Just so, because I can't just, yes. Unless it might just be my device.
So we'll do financial regulations first. So quite a bit of this is actually looking at this on as an overview, because one policy said one amount or one thing, and another policy said a different amount and a different thing, and to bring them together. So I will go through. So financial regulations first. So 5.2. So we're talking about banking arrangements, and it actually said a designated member to approve. The dual authorization actually in practice, us as officers are signing payments out to two managers, so it's a designated senior manager and the RFO, which is Donna.
I actually can see that change. It's the procurement one I can't see changes on.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, that one. And then there's 6.3, which again changes it from member to senior manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I can do procurement as well, that's fine. 11.4 is what we were just talking about in terms of the tendering, so that's changing that from town clerk to full council. 11.6 is removing member of the council to again a designated member of the senior management team. And then the internal controls part, it's so we've amended the limits in terms of what we can approve as staff members up to 350,000. It was 100,000, and given that we have particular service agreement, we're going to need to pay that twice a year as quite a substantial sum. That will fall within that sum, so it would really be only exceptional items over 350,000 that we would get a member to sign. And then I've put some additional detail in there in terms of being able to transfer between town council accounts, so that's unlimited by staff members, so we can manage the cash flow easily. And then we've added in some credit card maximum balances, so we've got those in there as well. We didn't actually have there, so that's financial regs.
I've got a question on that. Yes, Stephanie. Just on 11.6, when we do the procurement aspect,
Yeah.
I do wonder if there's something about a member being there as much as it is about a team member, but I'm not precious about that. But we've gone, it doesn't have to be. I just think it might be, if we're going out and doing procurement, we're doing tenders, we're just saying that it's two staff members. Yeah, I'm just wondering whether it would be good just say and a member of the council. But I'm not.
Was that purely for just for opening the sealed bids?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
we get them probably by email anyway, don't we?
Yeah.
I know, I was just trying to then work that through. Yeah.
I don't really need to be there literally for the opening of the sealed
No.
bids, as long as we're getting the information from them afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think, yeah, this is written, but it was all post announced, probably not.
Maybe we actually need to look at 11.6 in its entirety. I don't know how, whether other councils, like what does it, yeah.
So in the actual regulations, when you get them from Southbourne, out where they come from, it does say what a member to be there to open them, but these are written as they would have been with regards to receiving a piece of paper in the post.
So we are straying away from standard policies. I'm sure all councils probably have to, yeah. But yeah.
Is this just realistically what is workable and
Yes.
what is going to happen in practice?
Yes.
I'm happy
Yeah.
to say, yeah, happy with the check, yeah.
Yeah.
It just maybe we just need to maybe go back to SOLG and say, actually, we think you need to update your campaigns to a more modern environment and actually give guidance on how do you deal with tenders, especially where we think that city, town and parish councils are perhaps going to take on further work in the future. The kind of numbers that perhaps they will be dealing with are far greater, so the procurement process needs to be greater.
Yeah.
And I've looked at other large councils and they are following up the staff member process rather than a member process.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, purchase order policy. So down. So first one is 9.4. And the changes from will to can. So the deputy RFO and finance manager did say will authorise all individual invoices up to 30,000, and this just says can.
There's one at 9.1 as well.
What's that?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, this one's that one.
Only
Okay.
two to sign.
O2 sign. So part of what was picked up was clarifying 2 to sign. So it's to make it clear it's 2 to sign. And then
Is our banking set up to do then to also take?
yeah, so we've actually have less. We use Bankline, and you can't. No one person can authorise any payment. It has to be 2 people. You can't do it on your own. And the only other bank account we've got is CCLA, and the only money that can be transferred out of there can only go directly into our current account. That is the mandate. So that is one to sign,
Yeah.
but the money can only go into our current account. So that's where there is.
So we actually don't need to change our processes, we're just changing our policy to match the process.
That's correct. Yeah. And I think that's the only changes in that. So. Any other questions?
Okay then, so if there are no further questions, so the recommendation was for the members to consider amendments to the financial regulations, internal controls and purchase ordering and payment for goods and services policy, and to recommend the amendments to full council to approve. So do I have a proposer? Thank you. A seconder, councillor Hughes. Those in favour, can I see your hands? Moving on to number 6, scheme of delegation. So the recommendation for this is members to consider the amendments to the terms of reference and the scheme of delegation following on from the recent internal audit, and make recommendation to full council to approve. Any questions? Agenda item number 6.
Can you see those changes? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to go through them or?
Everybody happy or sorry to go through? I'll take that as a yes.
Yeah, this is signing off that the grants committee becomes a committee rather than the subcommittee.
Yeah. And the personnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can I have a proposer?
Both my committees.
Second. Suspect Robert. All those in favour? Agenda number 7, income and expenditure quarter 2. The recommendation for this is members to note the quarterly income and expenditure report as of the 31st of October 2023. Have any questions? Going to assume no, so can I have a proposer for that one? That's a Deacon and a seconder. All those in favour can show their hands. Thank you very much. Number 8, list of payments to be approved, and the recommendation for this is members to approve the list of payments made between the 1st of August 23 and the 31st of October 2023. Are there any questions for this one?
I just love how we itemise everything, if I'm honest, like literally someone could literally sit and trawl through. Everything is, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's just,
Simon said there's no questions.
do you know what, why I actually like this, sorry to come in there to tell you, I think it also shows what things cost. And it shows to members of the public, if you really wanted to go looking, actually it does cost, I'm just trying to think, £730 for 2 plaques and fittings, is that right? Yeah. As an example, or that we pay, I don't know, £96 to do some grass cutting in Manor, as an example, or the event to do the carols, actually Remembrance and Carols, it costs us £1,600 to get the insurance. And that things like that don't come for free, and that is just what it costs. So yeah. Interesting.
So I'll just having a second quick whiz through, and I noticed it's just out of interest that there's a tent, the line for tent removal from Victoria Park there. Is that simply, is there some sort of, is that when there's someone in the tent, or is that, right, okay, that's explains it.
Fiction.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a question, just as we're moving forward, is there, this is gonna be too much work, so if it is, I'm not too, yeah, exactly. I wonder if we could start maybe next year, as we put in next year's budget, to categorise the spend against the budget lines that it comes out of. Or at least the kind of area of the budget that it comes out of, so if it comes out of parks or allotments or just something, so that then maybe this payment list is also split by, or events would be another one. So then it's easier to just reference it to Ped's point about this event cost this amount and break down the payments. I don't know if that's going to cause a huge amount of administrative
There would be a
burden.
lot of.
Okay, if you feel like it's going to be a huge amount of effort for little gain, then I'm not too fast.
I'll look what
Well,
a full
that's just-
second one, but yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah,
So like a rolling report.
Like a cost centre report.
Like a cost center report as well, so because
Or
when in
even-
the budget, various different lines that
Yeah.
describe, so what that line is, just to then map the payments back against those specific lines. That's what I'm.
or even just in my world, even just to begin with, just highlighting in, I don't know, my colourful brain, but highlighting, like, you can see all the grants there, or, you know,
Yeah,
all of
yeah,
those
yeah.
are blue,
Yes,
for example,
yeah,
all of that grants who are there, and then all of the,
Okay.
yes,
All the maintenance jobs.
all the maintenance jobs. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you can just kind of
Yeah.
see, you know, it costs us £90 to repair a French window toilet, yeah.
yeah, or a new bench is gonna cost that, but you can see the payments then linking through.
So, sorry, just to remove a tent. Talking about one tent.
That's why I asked.
Bailiffs.
Yeah.
So I guess no further questions on that one. Proposer for that one, please. Councillor Smith, Roberts, excuse me. And the seconder, Councillor Twos, because he missed out on the last one. Make it fair. Okay, that's, and can I have a show of hands? Everyone's happy with that? Yeah, fantastic, carried. Agenda number 9 then, policy management policy. Yeah, so the recommendation is for members to consider and agree to adopt the policy management policy. Does anyone have any questions about why we need a policy about policy?
We have such an exciting one.
Councillor, and they say, well, I discussed policy management policy.
For those of you watching at home, and I know there are some avid fans, this is council time.
Councillor Twos.
Just interesting on how, I don't know how many policies we've got in total, but how do you know exactly when they're due for review? What system do you use?
I think we've got a lovely spreadsheet, which we're working on.
Each policy has, when it's been adopted, and a special code on the front sheet, isn't there? So
It says review due, like this one, we're going to review next, and it's September 2025, got 2 years on this one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so how does that pop up to say to someone it's time for a review?
I think initially we've been looking at populating them in calendar.
Yeah, it's simple like
As a
that.
calendar
Yeah.
invite to reminder, but whether there's, I know we've got now WorkNest as our HR and health and safety policy advisors.
Yeah.
Perhaps there's a way of we're just getting into the weeds of that new system.
Yeah, I asked because at my work we had auditors in and they said the same thing. They said you say you're going to review them, sorry, every now and again. How is someone going to remember to see if something needs reviewing? If that makes sense.
Some of the things, the annual things, we know.
Yes.
that-
Yeah, it's more likely to be the lower tier ones that get lost, maybe.
Yeah, and then because of, I think to your point, the review is due in September 25, so you probably want to work plan that much earlier. So that it's a kind of,
Yeah, my experience is there's kind of high level statutory stuff that needs to be done annually, some stuff that's not going to change materially probably, so every 2 years, and everything else you timetable in to fit in
Yeah.
with that based on the workload for all the other ones, and hope they don't all come up at the same time.
Indeed.
Otherwise we'll be quite busy, won't we?
Yes.
yes.
Talking about policies are policies. Right, so for no further questions, can I have a proposer for this one, please? Councillor Deakin and a seconder from my side. All those in favour, please show your hands, and that's carried. Agenda item number 10 of 12, so vexatious and habitual complaints policy. So the recommendation is members to consider and approve the policy of dealing with habitual and vexatious complaints. Any questions?
Yeah, I had a read. It was very interesting. But I'm assuming this covers people who are, it was the definition of complaint. Because a lot of it refers to sort of the complaint process. So someone, I wasn't 100% sure whether it covers someone making a thing that they would label themselves as a complaint, or more a habitual commenter, should we say? So it's whether it, do you feel that it covers that well enough? Because the vexatious element can be just a habitual stuff, but it's not necessarily the complaint.
Did we use another council's one for this? Didn't we? So, yeah.
It did seem pretty robust, and obviously we're not going to apply it frequently, I hope.
It does say complaints and or unrealistic outcomes
Okay,
in the definition and under section 2.
so requests, repeated requests.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still would be covered.
Yeah, don't think it has to be labelled complaint.
Okay.
No.
No.
Yeah. Any further questions? No. I will propose, so the recommendation for this one, that was what we would read it out, so we have a proposer. It's one councillor Hughes and a seconder, councillor Hughes, and a show of hands, everyone's happy. Carried. Okay, item number 11, to consider budget recommendations to full council. So the recommendation is members to consider the draft budget requirements for 2024-25 and confirm recommendations to full council for consideration. Any questions? Councillor Smith-Roberts.
Not necessarily questions, I think more it's a comment around, I think that we need to understand that it's obviously challenging times out there for residents, and whatever we propose is asking residents to pay more. So it's about demonstrating what we deliver within that. I think that we have done that well this year starting up. I think there's an expectation that we can do more. As we saw when we were looking at the list of what things cost, things do just genuinely cost more. I think we know that Somerset Council is in challenging financial times, and that social care is taking up the majority of the budgets that are there. So I think that there will be that if services are needed or what residents expect from their town, we will need to probably step into that gap, but I think we need to communicate and demonstrate what you get for your money, and that's an important part of it. I sadly couldn't attend the Christmas lights switch on last night. We all agreed that it was going to cost, was it 30 something, 40,000? Actually, do you know what? I saw all the photos and so much positive feedback on social media that I actually think if we can demonstrate that that's what you can do, yes, that's what it costs, but actually you do get a benefit in the town. I think there's a link that actually when I look at this budget moving forward, I would happily support it as long as we communicate what things cost and where people get what they get from it. And we're trying to support things like youth, supporting the vulnerable, trying to keep arts and culture going. We've got a grant scheme. We're there to support our residents. It's challenging, but I guess in a privileged position where if I wanted to, I could buy a Costa coffee for the cost of that a week, £2.37. I think actually it costs us more expensive than that when I go to the drive-through. We're not asking a lot from those when it's judged against a bandy household, and there is support schemes to support those that can't afford that. My little conversation.
Any further questions?
Do we have any idea how much those other items are going to be that aren't actually in there yet? Might be the election costs. And PC costs. Do we have a rough idea?
So you have an update on the toilets.
Okay.
There are 3 options, and it's just a very ballpark figure for Castle Green, because it's not a proper quote. I have just asked him to give us an idea for budgeting. So if we were to replace everything as it is, absolutely everything, brand new and leave Castle Green as it is, but every toilet and door, it's about 500,000. But there's a lot of buts. If you wanted to replace everything, if you wanted to just do an upgrade, he thinks it's about 200,000. But there's another option, which you might consider, which is a bit more controversial, maybe. But he's suggested that you might want to just have one entrance and have 4 or 5 male, female, disabled.
Unisex brand.
Yes, a bit like the toilets that are at French Weir, actually,
Yeah.
in terms of pods. We can have 5 pods with a front door and a open area. There is enough room in Castle Green to redesign it into a more useful space, so less toilets, but actually by doing that we could reduce our costs by 60 or 70%. And so you're getting rid of a urinal, you are providing toilets and still providing disabled access toilet. And actually, I think with that area there, you would then be left with a fairly sizable space to do something else with the toilet, maybe.
Okay, so we're still looking at a range of figures.
A range of 150 to 200,000, because I don't think we're going to replace it as it is.
Okay,
Demonstrates how much things cost though, doesn't it?
yeah.
I think it's a local government tax, really. Anything that's got local government from it gets an extra 50% as well. Right, okay.
I guess that assumes, or doesn't assume, but there's also grant funding that we might look to go and then also source to provide some of that somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay.
With regards to the elections, we still don't have a response from them, but
That could, those both could impact the end figure for the budget.
so
On top
the,
of what's currently proposed.
so the elections is, I think, the worst case figure. So the election costs, we've suggested we can only afford to pay our budget to them this year.
Right.
And next year we would pay the second half of it, plus put some money towards future. So that won't get any worse.
Right.
With regards to the toilets, depending which one you're looking at, so we've put in 200,000 in the top, 150,000 and 100,000. So depending what you choose, it might be only one toilet that we do, or depending if we get grant funding, we could use that as much funding, and at least you have that in our pot.
That is-
So having been some doors to get that.
So the minimum amount is already in budget technically.
Yes.
Okay.
And the Coney Street stewardship is still very much
Okay.
And on something like that, where it is quite nebulous at the moment, but we put a holding line in there. I know that we're not obviously approving the budget tonight, we're just recommending it goes to full council. If we approve the budget at full council early next year, and the final approval, if say something like the commission stewardship then didn't happen, but that budget line's still in there, are we okay to then free up those funds to redistribute to another budget line?
Yeah.
We are, okay, so we can fire the money over still, if we want to.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we've had to put the provision in there so that we've got it if we need it. If not, we'll just redistribute
Yes.
elsewhere.
So I've got a question. So in this budget, there's nothing in relation to what Somerset Council may wish to give over to us, or we may wish to take off our hands.
So there is some, but not a huge amount. So in here, we've got some devolution. So we've got devolution contingency, 200,000, devolution services, 100,000. But I don't think if
So the question is, and obviously at the moment, we potentially, the council could be voting on 113% increase.
Mhm.
What would that potentially take that to if things like the brew house and other elements were to come under the ownership or stewardship of the town council? What would we be looking potentially at? Because if at full councils next month, it gets passed, we may then wish, we may not have the answers from the Somerset Council yet.
Yeah.
So then what happens? Would we require an emergency full council to then,
So we don't have the answers to the questions still yet, so we don't know how much those things, and we don't have to know quite yet. Maybe that's going to form part of the conversation, please, as to what you're interested in, so that we can have more formal conversations in terms of those items, because we understand that if we wanted a few things, we could come to us as a package deal, or possibly, and we don't know what those costs are because we haven't firmed them up. In terms of the process, you could agree it as it is tonight, knowing that there are still going to be some changes and it could still be discussed at the council. That is probably the correct process to take, because we're looking to probably potentially put in another finance and governance in January, so that you can review it again in January when we've got some more information, and then full council in February will agree it, and we'll push back the date that we'll get precept requesting.
And can you do environments even after you sign off the budget?
Absolutely.
So we could then make it kind of like an emergency budget, but not where you would say, actually, we're not going to do that this year, but we can do this year, but it's been in the budget because of this. So you do environment between services.
And that's what's happened a lot this year, because how the budget was set and how it is slightly different. So as long as we've got enough money in to do what you want to do, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the right line. And I think we are still going to be in a bit of a position of best guess.
Yeah, and I know that's the advice, conversation I've had with Somerset Council, is that they're advising parishes to allocate funds to be loose in the short term about what those funds might be for, and then that will become clearer down the line. So I think it's a fair question. So we probably have to ask ourselves, do we think there's enough in there that gives us flexibility down the line, or isn't there? I guess looking at that list of things, for what it's worth, I'm frustrated that we don't have more details on the numbers, but I think it puts us as a parish in a difficult position to be able to try and budget. And I emphasise the message that we're in a particularly difficult position because we are the county town and the largest parish in Somerset. So particularly, and a year old. Yeah, so there's a whole load of things I think really that gives us a load of opportunity, like because of those things, but also we're in a difficult position. I think we need to make sure that we build a budget that's sensible, that enables us to do those things next year and the years that follow. I think the biggest disservice we could do to people of Taunton is to not put enough in there and then feel like we're just saying no all of next year and really see standards drop across the town. And that's across the whole town. I think sometimes when people talk about town, they think of the town centre, but it's the whole town that we need to be thinking about.
I guess what I'm trying to ask is, do we fit? Because I'm hesitant. If we get to a point where we set a budget and we've actually really unfortunately underestimated what these things could come, but then we turn around and say, well, actually we can't afford it, but we'd love to, and then those services potentially topple over and then no one can look after them. Do we have any idea when they're going to give us these figures? Because I'm quite astonished that the conversations haven't materialised quicker, considering the predicament that they're in.
We know that they're working on it. We had a meeting today with a council officer, but we also need to steer from you as to what you'd like for them to be able to come up with what that looks like in terms of costs, because they're not going to come to us with a list of
What?
options. And the service, so they may be able to come up with some costs in terms of property that you might like, or land. But in terms of services, I don't even know if they're there yet in terms of working out what those will cost. I don't think I've not had a conversation about what those costs look like.
To me, it just seems strange to see the letter like that saying, here's the opportunities, but there's nothing. No prices are fixed to them.
So
We're in the same position as every council. We're just on the
No, I know, but I'm just surprised, that they've gone, well, this is, each individual council has its own area, so it's not like they don't know what assets or what services are in those areas, so they could have personalised it to each parish and gone, well, this costs this costs this, give us the best estimate, let's go.
I think there's a wider discussion as to what it, as the council, is deciding as to what services it can continue when there's an £80 million budget gap that's caused by social care. So I think there's generally a discussion there is a discussion, I'm a lead member on Somerset Council, and there is a discussion around what is it that the unitary council can continue to afford to provide against the backdrop where statutory services are what it's being advised it needs to give, and lack of funding from central government towards social care.
But on the letter, they obviously know what the opportunities is. This is why I'm to now allow towns and parishes to plan. They know what it costs them. They have those figures.
Yeah, but they have those figures at Somerset Council level, and that's why we've struggled with our budget, because they've had to look at this huge budget in terms of parks and open spaces and try and calculate actually what are individual park costs.
Yeah.
And they don't have that detail at Somerset, so
At the time of bringing 5 councils together.
yes.
So the part of the chat, so I agree with you. What do I say? I totally agree with you. I'm in full agreement with you, and I share your frustration. I genuinely do. Part of the challenge, however, it is that you think about each district and the county all describe things in their budget lines slightly different things. Everything was coded slightly differently. Everything had these different descriptions. So actually, just that job of aligning 5 different budgets into one, making sense of it all, using the same language, having a single source of truth, that in its work it could be a multi-year piece of work to make that happen.
A new finance system.
And
And
then
then you find
Yes.
so I share your frustration. I don't think it's moved quick enough. I think it's just a shame that we're in the position where we're having to have this conversation. And I think my ask of us as councillors at Taunton Town is just that we remain flexible to it and aware that the situation's less than ideal, but open-minded.
And I think that we're doing that in looking at the budget by putting 300,000 aside for devolution. Do I think that's enough? Potentially not, but it's a starting point for us to consider and then see what's available.
Yeah.
That's
So that potentially could limit us, really.
If that's all you put in, Bill.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest issue that you have, other than any of the other town councils, the large town councils, is the fact that we don't sit on a pot of earmark reserves from many previous years. Lots of your other large parishes have got £500,000, £1 million.
and their precept is already that much higher again. So
Absolutely.
if you take Langport, it's actually 149 or something pounds a year, or Broome, they all have a higher level of precepting power.
Yeah.
Now we could say, okay, we've got a greater population, but ultimately it still costs X amount to do the services that you provide, regardless of how many people are putting into the pot, because the expectation is greater.
And they'll build their reserves up over a number of years, so they can switch those choices to something else, whereas we don't quite have that.
And we're dealing with people looking at the percentage increase. So whilst we comparably with other large councils, we still may be less than some of them, but people will just see the increase, which is a bit, it's going to be quite a hard.
Because it's not just us.
No.
I mean, you're going to have 6% from the county. Then you're going to have the Police and Crime Commission there, and all of people probably are looking around about 20% increase in the council tax this year. So for me, this will be the next crisis in the country.
Yeah.
And if they've got enough prisons to put people in for not paying their council tax and all that. Okay. Okay. Any other questions on this one? No. So just to be clear then, we are voting to,
Two things we're waiting for, actually, sorry, just to, in case it's not on the list there. So
Okay.
the first is to consider the draft budget and recommend to full council for approval as it is, knowing it's a working state. And then secondly, to consider setting up a working group, because we know this is going to be a moving thing, and there are going to be other conversations about services and assets at the working group, and with that needs to be recommended to full council to go to. So it's a
That seems sensible to me.
yeah.
so, and the full council will vote on who they'd like to be on that. Okay, so sorry, I'll just read those recommendations, sorry. So, 2 recommendations: to consider the draft budget and recommend to full council for approval, and to consider setting up a working group of chairs of the town councillors to consider what services and assets the town council would like to take on, to understand the financial implications of this, and recommend this group to be approved at the next full council, which is next month.
We want chairs and not volunteers.
No, it says a chair. I think it's specifically says chairs.
It specifically says chairs, but you could choose not for that not to be the case at full council if you don't want to.
I'm happy to propose both of those, unless you want to have them separately, for the record. But
I'm happy to take both.
I'm happy to propose both of those. Thank you.
For a second. So, sorry, can I just have a point of clarity as well, just on number one? This is just purely voting to send it to full committee. Okay, can I have a show of hands on? That carries.
So that's going to governance meeting, apologies, I've been booked for 3 places.
So, number 12, which is the final agenda point of this evening, I have Taunton Leisure Civic Twinning Link Grant, link. So that's a recommendation is for members to consider and agree the granting £6,121.26 plus 1.45% in interest to the Taunton Leisure Civic Twinning Link, which returns the funds that the council has been holding on their behalf since the 11th of the 7th, 2023. So just for clarity, this is just giving them back their money plus the interest we've earned on their money. So it's all square.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
That's been recommended by the auditor as.
It has, the best way to get the money back.
Fabulous. Any questions?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Cool. So can I have a proposer on that one? Councillor Deakin and a seconder, Councillor Dews. Show of hands. Carried. Fabulous. So with that then, I shall close this evening's meeting.